Growing up, you were likely praised for being the responsible one or an old soul. While these labels sound like compliments, psychology suggests they often mask a deeper burden. Being too mature for your age usually means you skipped essential stages of childhood development. Instead of playing, you were likely busy managing the emotions or needs of those around you. This survival mechanism creates a specific set of habits that follow you into adulthood. You might feel like you are constantly performing a role rather than living your life. In this video, we will explore the 5 psychological signs that you grew up too fast. We will examine how these traits formed and the impact they have on your relationships today. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming the parts of yourself you lost. Let's look at the 5 signs of the parentified child in an adult world. Psychology shows that early maturity is rarely a choice made by the child. It is often a response to a concept called parentification. This occurs when a child is forced to provide emotional or practical support to their parents. 1. Hyper-vigilance toward your environment is the first major sign of this history. In an unstable home, children learn to read tiny shifts in body language to predict danger. Cognitive psychology suggests this creates a brain that is always on, searching for potential problems. You might have become the family peacemaker because it was the only way to feel safe. Over time, this survival tactic hardens into a permanent personality trait. You stop being a child and start becoming a miniature adult out of pure necessity. As a consequence, your own needs are buried under the weight of everyone else's expectations. 2. You possess an unusually high degree of hypervigilance regarding the emotions of others. Psychology calls this being an emotional barometer for your environment. You can detect a subtle shift in a person's tone or posture before they even speak. This skill developed because knowing the mood of an adult was a matter of survival. Research suggests that children in unpredictable homes become expert observers of microexpressions. In adulthood, this manifests as a constant, exhausting need to monitor the room. You might feel responsible for fixing a mood that you didn't even cause. If someone is quiet or upset, you immediately assume it is your job to intervene. The real-life consequence is that you never truly feel relaxed in social settings. You are so focused on others' internal states that you lose touch with your own. 3. A relentless drive to act as the peacekeeper often defines your interpersonal relationships. Psychology shows that children in high-conflict homes often adopt the role of the mediator. You learned early on that your safety depended on keeping everyone else calm. Cognitive psychology suggests this leads to emotional self-silencing to avoid triggering others. You likely became so good at de-escalating arguments that you lost your own voice. In adulthood, this manifests as an intense fear of confrontation and chronic people-pleasing. The psychological cost is a state of constant internal exhaustion. You are always working to maintain a fragile peace that feels like it might shatter. This prevents you from expressing genuine anger or setting necessary boundaries. By prioritizing harmony over truth, you inadvertently distance yourself from your true needs. 4. You likely struggle with an extreme form of self-reliance that makes asking for help feel impossible. Psychology calls this hyperindependence, and it is frequently a trauma response from early childhood. When you were young, you may have realized that the adults around you couldn't be relied upon. As a result, you learned that the only way to ensure things got done was to do them yourself. In your mind, needing assistance became synonymous with being a burden or a failure. Research suggests this creates a deep-seated fear of vulnerability in adult relationships. You might find yourself drowning in tasks while refusing to let anyone share the load. This habit often leads to physical and emotional burnout because you lack a support system. The real-life consequence is a profound sense of loneliness, even when you are surrounded by people. You have become so good at taking care of yourself that no one thinks you need taking care of. 5. You carry a chronic sense of responsibility for things that are logically outside of your control. Cognitive psychology calls this an internalized supervisor that monitors every mistake or missed detail. In childhood, being the responsible one was how you earned approval or kept the peace. Psychology shows that this leads to an overdeveloped sense of agency over others' failures. If a group project fails or a friend is unhappy, you automatically feel at fault. You operate under the assumption that if you just worked harder, everything would be okay. This belief is a defensive shield against the uncomfortable reality of life's unpredictability. The consequence is a life lived in a state of high-functioning anxiety and hyperfixation. You struggle to distinguish between what is your duty and what belongs to someone else. By taking on everyone's baggage, you leave no room for your own emotional development. For the child who was praised for their maturity, mistakes were never just small errors. They were threats to the only identity that felt safe and valuable to the family. Psychology shows that this early pressure often evolves into maladaptive perfectionism in adulthood. You feel a constant need to maintain an image of being perfectly capable and composed. Research suggests this is often a defense mechanism against a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. If you aren't the reliable one who gets everything right, who are you? This leads to chronic overthinking and a paralyzing fear of being seen as incompetent. You likely spend hours refining minor details to avoid even the possibility of criticism. The real-life consequence is a state of perpetual dissatisfaction with your own achievements. By chasing an impossible standard, you miss out on the messy, authentic experience of being human. Sign 4 involves a persistent feeling of being an outsider among people your own age. Psychology shows that mature children often struggle to relate to the typical concerns of their peers. While other kids were focused on play, you were likely preoccupied with adult worries and responsibilities. Research suggests this creates a maturity gap that can lead to significant social isolation. You might have felt more comfortable talking to teachers or parents than to your classmates. In adulthood, this manifests as a difficulty engaging in small talk or lighthearted social activities. You may find the interests of your age group trivial or even frustratingly superficial. The real-life consequence is a chronic sense of loneliness, even when you are socially active. You are looking for deep, meaningful connection in a world that often prizes the surface. This lack of belonging can reinforce the idea that you must be self-reliant to survive. Sign 5 is a profound difficulty with spontaneity and the concept of unstructured play. Psychology shows that play is a vital developmental stage where children learn to feel safe while being vulnerable. If you had to be mature, you likely viewed frivolous activities as a waste of time or even dangerous. Research suggests that parentified children often develop a functional mindset where every action must have a purpose. In adulthood, you might find it impossible to relax without feeling a nagging sense of guilt. When others are being silly or spontaneous, you may feel an uncomfortable urge to remain composed. Cognitive psychology calls this a rigid cognitive style, used to maintain a sense of control. The real-life consequence is an inability to fully connect with joy or the present moment. You are so used to being the adult that letting your guard down feels like a risk. By avoiding play, you inadvertently keep yourself trapped in a cycle of perpetual labor. Psychology shows that skipped developmental stages often resurface later in life as a delayed adolescence. When you spend your youth being hyperesponsible, you repress your natural impulses to explore and rebel. Cognitive psychology suggests these suppressed desires don't disappear, they simply wait for a safe outlet. As an adult, you may suddenly experience an overwhelming urge to act out or change everything. Research calls this a compensatory rebellion against the strict, adult persona you were forced to adopt. You might make impulsive career changes or seek out the thrill of risky, spontaneous adventures. To others, it looks like a midlife crisis, but it is actually a delayed search for self. The real-life consequence is a period of deep instability as you reconcile your past with your present. You are finally giving yourself the permission to be immature that you never had as a child. While disorienting, this stage is essential for integrating all the parts of your personality. Breaking the cycle of overfunctioning starts with recognizing that your hyperresponsibility is a learned survival strategy. Psychology shows that healing requires you to consciously unlearn the role of the universal fixer. Research suggests practicing selective competence, where you intentionally choose not to solve every problem you see. Cognitive psychology recommends setting firm boundaries to protect your emotional energy from being exploited. This involves learning to say no without providing an elaborate justification or feeling intense guilt. You must also prioritize self-care activities that serve no productive purpose other than pure enjoyment. Integrating your inner child means giving yourself the space to be messy, curious, and even a little irresponsible. As you step back, you may fear that the people around you will struggle or fail. However, allowing others to face their own consequences is a vital part of healthy adult relationships. The real-life consequence of this shift is a profound increase in your personal freedom and mental clarity. Being too mature for your age was a survival skill that served you when you were vulnerable. Psychology shows that you can honor that past version of yourself without remaining trapped by it. Your reliability and empathy are genuine strengths, provided they are no longer fueled by fear. Research suggests that true maturity involves knowing when to lead and when to simply exist. Healing is not about losing your competence, but about gaining the freedom to be imperfect. You are allowed to step down from the role of the person who fixes everything. The good news is that your worth was never actually tied to how much you could handle. Remember, you were a child who deserved to be cared for, and you can still provide that care for yourself now.